Hey, welcome. Today, we're diving into something really fascinating, a powerful argument that tries to connect modern cosmology, our understanding of the universe, directly to ancient scripture. The central claim here is pretty bold. What if the story of our universe was written down long, long before we ever built a telescope?
So, everything we're looking at today really boils down to this one pretty mind blowing question. It suggests that the story of creation, the Big Bang, something we've only really grasped for about a century, was actually described in detail in the Quran over 1400 years ago.
All right, so how exactly is this connection made? Well, it all starts right at the very beginning with the birth of the universe itself. Now, according to the scientific view that's presented, everything we see, everything we are, all of space, all of time, all matter and energy literally exploded out of a single point that was just unbelievably hot and dense. And get this, before that moment, nothing. Our universe just didn't exist.
And we're talking about a timescale it's hard to even wrap your head around. The source we're examining puts this moment at around 15 billion years ago. That's where the whole cosmic story kicks off.
Okay, so now let's look at the other side of this coin, the scriptural parallel that's being presented. This verse from the Quran describes the heavens and the earth as being of one piece before a divine act parted them. The argument is that this ancient description is a dead ringer for our modern scientific idea of that initial singularity. So let's just break this down side by side so it's super clear. On one hand, science talks about a single, unified point that then exploded. On the other hand, scripture talks about one piece that was then parted or separated. The argument being made is that these aren't just similar stories. They're two different ways of describing the exact same cosmic event. Okay, so you have this massive parting, this incredible explosion. But what happened next? What did the brand new universe even look like? Well, the next parallel drawn is to an era that's described as being filled with cosmic smoke. From a scientific standpoint, the early universe was basically this hot, soupy fog of atomic particles. You couldn't see through it. But as this primordial cloud started to cool down, gravity began its work, pulling these particles together. And that's what eventually clumped together to create the very first stars and galaxies. And this is where the second key verse comes into play. It describes a time when the heavens were smoke. And the whole argument here really hinges on that one specific word, smoke, as a way to describe the state of the early universe. So you see the parallel that's being drawn here, right? It's between that scientific idea of a cloud of atomic particles and the scriptural term smoke. The claim is that using the word smoke isn't just a random guess. It's a shockingly accurate way to describe that gassy, particle-filled state of the early cosmos long before we had the science to name it. All right, so we've gone from a single point to a cloud of smoke, and now we have stars and galaxies. But the story's not over, not by a long shot. The next major parallel has to do with something our universe is still doing right now, expanding. To get your head around this next idea, there's this fantastic analogy that's often used. Picture drawing a bunch of dots on a balloon to represent galaxies. Now, when you start blowing up the balloon, the dots get further apart, right? But here's the key. The dots aren't moving across the balloon's surface. It's the fabric of the balloon itself that's stretching and carrying them apart. The argument is that's exactly how our universe works. The very fabric of space-time is expanding. But the viewpoint we're looking at today takes that balloon analogy one step further. It suggests that, just like a balloon can only be inflated so much before it pops, the universe's expansion isn't going to go on forever. According to this view, it's going to hit a limit, and that's when its existence will come to an end. Okay, that's a pretty huge claim, right? So you're probably asking, where's the proof? Let's look at the scientific evidence that's brought in to support this whole framework. The argument really leans on two key pieces of scientific evidence. First is something called the cosmic microwave background. Think of it like a faint leftover heat from the Big Bang that fills all of space. And the second is a wild idea from Einstein's theory of relativity, that on the grandest scale, the geometry of our universe is actually flat. Now, that idea of a flat universe can sound a little weird. So to explain it, the analysis uses another fantastic analogy. Imagine space-time is a big, stretched-out piece of fabric. If you put something heavy on it, like the sun, it creates a dip, a curve in the fabric. And that curve is what we feel as gravity, causing smaller things like Earth to orbit around it. And you really have to grasp this idea of a flat universe, because it's the key that unlocks the final and honestly the most dramatic parallel of them all. This one's about the end of everything. So, to paint a picture of how the universe will ultimately end, the argument points us to this verse. The imagery here is just incredibly powerful. On a final day, the heavens will be rolled up, just like a scribe would roll up a scroll. So you see the logic here? It's actually pretty direct. A scroll is flat. You can't really roll up a ball, but you can roll up a flat sheet. So this directly connects that Quranic image of a scroll to Einstein's theory of a flat universe, turning the act of rolling up the scroll into this incredible metaphor for the end of the cosmos. So after all that, what's the big takeaway? What's the bottom line here? The argument concludes that these parallels from the single point of origin to the cosmic smoke to a flat universe that gets rolled up like a scroll are just too specific and too accurate to be a coincidence. The final assertion is that this knowledge must have come from a divine source. And that, of course, leaves us with one last really profound question to think about. When we dig into arguments like these, we find ourselves standing right at the crossroads of science, interpretation, and faith. And it makes you wonder, where do the lines between them truly meet?